From Brown Bear Herbs. Today I was hearing news stories about air quality and lung issues due to fires. And at the same time, my father, who's had really severe asthma his whole life and was put on hospice in 2020 for COPD, which is like more really advanced lung issues. He called me to tell me that the flower essence that we've been working on since 2020 has helped him. He was been taken off of hospice, put back onto palliative care recently, and it turns out he had run out of the Easter lily. And so he tried it again because I was like, why don't we just give it a shot? And he called to report that he was using his inhalers less, and he was having less shortness of breath, less wheezing, able to like relax out of that, and also sleeping better. So I just am here with a message about how herbs can help your lungs and how we're not in a downward spiral of lung health. Think of it as a wave. Like, are you ready to ride the waves of healing using nature medicine? You could end up better than before, the air quality started causing problems. I wanted to talk a little bit more about how I use mullein in my smoking blends and how that's used for lung health, as well as explain how I got over my asthma, totally a thing in the past, with Grindelia, and then a little bit more about the use of Easter lily for lung health. When I first got into herbalism, it was because plants started talking to me, and I was not a smoker at all, but I was kind of introduced to some herbs that are in a sacred indigenous smoking blend, and I've been asked not to share that information, and I'm totally cool with that. But one of the herbs that was in that blend was mullein, and I think it's really important to talk about mullein. And I learned right away that when I tried to branch out and try smoking other things, just for a plant meditation or the experience, I learned very quickly that I could not smoke anything without mullein. There are a few people I talk to that are sensitive to mullein, and I don't really enjoy it as a tea, but overall I find that it really helps reduce the risk of smoking, first of all. But then I've also used it in my clinical practice. I have used it specifically with herbalists as a smoke for pneumonia. Basically, in those situations, I felt like there was so much moisture in the lungs that taking it as a tea would be a really indirect method. And plus my reading on the subject was also indicating that, historically indigenous peoples and also in Europe have used mullein as a smoking herb for asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia. So when I was working with these other herbalists, one of whom was Matthew Wood, so you can see if he speaks about using the mullein. They were resistant because they weren't smokers at first to use the mullein as a smoking herb, but then they did because of the pneumonia, and they both had the experience of finally being able to rest again and recline more and stuff like that, because that pneumonia, often you just can't even lay down to sleep because it's of all that fluid. So I know from my clinical experience how great that is. I know from smoking personally how much it helps me. I was also talking to my friend at Herbalists Without Borders, Jocelyn, the executive director, about the herb, and she was saying that she uses it often in place of an inhaler. She had really bad asthma and was taking more and more medications, and she felt like the mullein plant was just kind of calling to her. So she started smoking it, and it sounds like she's gotten off of most of her medications for asthma, which is amazing. So definitely don't feel like if you get an asthma diagnosis that you are in for a life sentence. That's what I was told. I developed asthma when I was around 3 or 4. A lot of times it happens because you have a lung infection that is poorly resolved, which means that, there's still kind of mucus in there. that doesn't get cleared out. There's sticky residue that's in there and it doesn't get all resolved. And a lot of times that happens because we treat with antibiotics or we don't treat at all. A lot of times with childhood lung infections, they're not really treated per se. You just like get through it. I had a dream quite a few years ago now. I was having, it must have been around 10 years ago. I was having hip pain from carrying my toddler on my left side. So I had a dream about the herb Grindelia, which is a coastal native here in Oregon, to use it for my hip. And I researched, I had no experience with Grindelia, but I had experience with my dreams being helpful. And so I researched, I didn't find anything about being useful for hip joints or joints, but I knew some other kind of herbs that had similar resinous quality to them that were used for joint health. And that includes like lomatium. That's the one I think of off the top of my head. So anyway, I had the dream and I knew my dreams are good. So I was like, I'm going to try it. So I took it for 6 weeks or so and my asthma just disappeared. My hip also got better, but the asthma is something that I've been dealing with my whole life and it just went away. And I hadn't really thought of it as that big of a deal because it wasn't like my father's, which was really severe my whole life. But afterwards I was like, oh wow, I can like go for a jog. This is great. No problem. Just like biking home from work, was easy peasy, no medication needed. And I don't like the asthma medication at all, hate it. So I was really happy about that. And it enabled me to start volunteering with animals. I worked at Wildlife Care Center through the Audubon locally here for a while. And I got to handle and help birds, like birds of prey and little birds and some animals too. It was super fun. And I would still have some allergy symptoms to the animals, but I would not get asthma. And it was amazing. And I was like, Grindelia, you are awesome. And that might not work for everyone's asthma, but basically when I find, like once in a while I'll get a lung infection and I'll feel that that like beginnings of asthma feeling again. And then I will just go to Grindelia and it takes care of it again. So you might want to call it something like you have the predisposition to asthma, but there are herbs that can help. And I would say another troubleshooting thing, like before you resolve all your asthma, is that you can take a couple cardamom pods prior to doing something you know is likely to trigger an asthma attack. That's an Ayurvedic remedy. So just the whole cardamom pod, 2 or 3, like before you're going to go do exercise, or like if you're going to go to a moldy allergy filled place, you could do that too, about 20 minutes beforehand. And I use that, and that was very helpful prior to the Grindelia. So that's great. And then, I was just going to close up by just like so excited about my father and his lung health, and the Easter lily. So I would not normally have like run to Easter lily for a massive chest issue. Like I know I would not have done that. But he was very apprehensive about using herbalism, as I like to, that's my thing. But he was nervous about it because in the past he had kind of like done like DIY herbalism and he would overdose because he'd be like, well, if a little bit is good, then a lot is great. And I'm really all about small dosing and like energetic prompts kind of from the herbs. Like the herb in small doses prompts your body with new like intelligence. It's like, here's some new intelligence that I have and I can offer you. And whereas if you take it in large dose, it's more like acting more like an allopathic medicine would, like Tylenol or like a antibiotic. Like it's not really adjusting the underlying stuff. It's more like hitting it over the head. So he was not into any herbs, and he was on hospice. So it was severe. But I was just like, you know what, he's been a meditator as long as I've known him. And so I was like, and he's into energy work. And so I was like, how would you feel about an energetic medicine, like a flower essence? And he said, okay. And so I wasn't expecting anything major at all. I usually think of Easter lily as being used for female reproductive health, and especially PCOS, like with helping to clear out stuck mucus in the like fallopian tubes in the reproductive tract. So, but I had heard it could be good for bronchitis, and now since it went so well for my father, I did more research on it and learned that in Chinese medicine, not the flower essence, but the bulb is used for bronchitis. So that was exciting to find that out. I'm just kind of blown away. Like, I've had some really amazing experiences with flower essences, and I've seen it in my clients, and I've heard other stories, but it still kind of blows me away, like that you can get such a dramatic result. But really the premise of the flower essence and gem essences is that you're dealing with the underlying energy of imbalance. And so when you shift the energy, the body follows. And that I know to be true from being a long-time meditation practitioner and doing yoga and stuff like that. And you can think of it even in terms of like manifestation. Like, if you shift the energy, things shift all around you. So exciting. And these 3 herbs are certainly by no means, or I think maybe 4. So it's like we got Easter lily, mullein, cardamom, and Grindelia. That's not all the lung herbs out there. I use a lot of lung herbs, and there's in my smoking blends, there are many of the herbs in each blend are for lung health. And so, a lot of people are like, how can you possibly smoke something and have it be good for you? Well, I don't think it's ever good to like habitually smoke. I think it can definitely be a great avenue of administering medicine here and there. And I can tell you that it does matter what you smoke. So if you are smoking tobacco cigarettes with a bunch of chemicals in them and they're addictive, then that is going to be, because they're addictive, you're smoking way, way more than you would anything else. And then you switch to one of my blends with mullein in it and other lung herbs, then what you're doing is significantly reducing your risk. Overall, my goal is to support health, not just physical health, but emotional health and spiritual health too. So the herbs in my smoking blends address you at many different levels: your spirit, your emotions, your mind, your body. The goal is to go from a cigarette that enslaves you with addiction and toxic chemicals and all the time expenses to a cigarette that can help you deal with your actual problems, that you, through educating yourself, can determine what you need to help you, like why you're smoking. What are the emotions behind that? What is the mental thing behind that? What can help you? And I have lots of videos on that for the different blends to see what fits for you. But you become empowered. You become the person who's empowered. You can still have a smoke here and there. Like, it happens all the time. Like, my cigarettes can be really helpful for people who are have already quit. They've quit, and then something comes up in their life, like a death or some big emotional stuff. And you know how it is when you're really stressed out. You want to reach for a pack of cigarettes because it just seems like an easy fix. Well, instead, you could reach for a pack of gentle and protectives that help with emotional overwhelm. Or let's say that you're doing pretty great, but your stress level goes up and your mental anxiety, and you're kind of have like ADHD symptoms. I hear so many people saying that the Clear Mind herbal smoking blend that I make is really helpful for that. And the beautiful thing is that when you start healing from that grief or that stress and like things level out, that whole time you weren't smoking a pack a day, you're smoking a cigarette here and there, and you're not re-addicted. You're not back in that pattern of spending all your money on cigarettes that are proven will kill you. Okay. So I'm here to support you make the transition from being enslaved by your cigarettes to being empowered with earth medicine. And you could smoke, grab a pack of my cigarettes and have that be the last smoking you ever do, or they can be there for you when you have times of need. Either way. If you're not a smoker and you have lung issues you'd like help working on, please feel free to reach out for an herbal consultation. You can find more information and my products at brownbearherbs.com. Please like and subscribe.